Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Today, my friends, has got to be one of the toughest days in pro football. How do I know? Because I was one of those guys that got cut on the last day. So I know what that feeling feels like. Guys have been in OTAs, guys have been in training camp, guys have played preseason games, and no doubt it's difficult, it's hard on the coaches to make these decisions and Howie Roseman, the GMs, to make these decisions. But they have to happen. You know, some of these guys have forged friendships. You know, now the guys aren't going to be on the team anymore. What does that look like? Not only the Philadelphia Eagles, but every other team in the NFL has had to cut down to 53 today by 4 o'clock Eastern time. The jury's in. There's a lot of surprises. But hey, there's no one better than my little brother from the Eagles organization, former Eagles linebacker Ike Reese and co-host of WIP's Midday show. He's here to help me break it all down, to chat about it, and talk about the expectations of this upcoming year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Ike, my brother, how you doing, man?
Oh, man, listen, big bro, you know, it's always it's an honor to come on the show and chop it up about our beloved Eagles and just talk football and whatever else you want to talk about, you know. And listen, anytime I can have your wisdom imparted upon me, I'm good. I'm good. So, yes, I'm here, brother. What's happening?
Hey, listen, man, I like to have you on the show because of your energy, man. I ain't got that kind of energy, you know. But
no more. You still got it. You just reserve it. You bring it out when it needs to be brought out.
Yeah, but listen, man, props to you, bro, because I listen to you when I'm in Philly and the midday show is on. I listen to you.
Afternoon drive.
Sorry about that. I even wrote it down wrong in the promos. Forgive me, man. So let's jump into it. And let's go around the NFL before we jump into Eagles, because we can talk about that till the cows come home. Yeah. So there's a couple of moves today that was made that was, you know, a little bit shocking. The biggest one is Cam Newton being let go today. I see a lot of people on social media that feel like, you know, this was the best decision for the New England Patriots, that they weren't surprised, that Mac Jones, you know, looks like the real deal. And that's all in fine and dandy, you know, to, like the saying go, to they hit you in the mouth. You know, sure. I mean, for a young quarterback playing against 2s and 3s for most of the preseason, you know, I would imagine that he should perform the way that he performed. I'm just a little stunned because what if Matt Jones goes backwards? And it's a possibility because those defenses he saw in the preseason aren't going to be things that he's going to see during the regular season. I just feel like his head is going to be swimming. Listen, Bill Belichick, you can't question the dude. The dude got 6 Super Bowls under his belt. I guess he feels like he knows what he's doing. And I guess the difference between having, you know, your rookie quarterback salary opposed to an $11 million guarantee if Cam Newton's on the roster, you know, right now, maybe that plays into it. But I thought Cam had a pretty good preseason. Most teams, you know, would have left him in that situation. Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots made the decision. Well, they really, to be honest with you, I've been reading up on it. They haven't even named this kid as the starter. So, you know, Belichick could be pulling something, you know, where he get Cam to come back and take $7 million instead of 11, and then they bring him back in the 11th hour. So let's just wait and see. But it's still a shock to see one Cameron Newton being released today. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, Seth, I think initially I was a little surprised, more because I kind of felt, you know, even though Mac Jones had played well in the preseason, you know, it's crucial, at least I think, for the New England Patriots to get off to a good start. So you almost need someone who at least would give you the best chance to win to get your season started off. And you know, we've seen this thing plenty of times, Seth, where quarterback is drafted early, whether it's the first round or the second round, usually the incumbent starter is given the opportunity to go in there and prove that it's time to move on to the next guy versus the coaches deciding coming out of training camp that the young guy is the best option for them. And so I see this and I say, Seth, I wonder if Cam Newton's decision to do whatever he did, whether it was to go home for whatever reasons it was, whatever landed him on that reserve COVID list, I'm wondering how much of that played into this decision.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, are they necessarily choosing who gives them the best chance to win early in the season? Or are they choosing who they believe inevitably is probably going to be the guy who's the best leader and the best reliable player for them moving forward? In other words, is it inevitable that they're going to Mac Jones? And Cam's decisions making may have contributed to Bill Belichick losing some faith in, you know what, can I really trust him going into the regular season to make the right decisions for this team? He's already unvaccinated. He's already had COVID. Now he's made a decision that put him on the reserve COVID list during a quarterback battle. Is this a guy that we need to waste any more time moving forward with, or should we just cut out all the speculation, all the drama, and just go with Mac Jones and let the chips fall where they may? And I think it had more to do with that, because I don't think necessarily Cam lost the job due to play on the field. I really do believe there was something behind the closed doors where they started to question whether or not, is this the best guy for us leading our team, whether it's in the immediate future or just through this season. And somewhere along the line, behind closed doors, Bill Belichick lost faith in Cam Newton being able to do that. And they made the decision, you know what? This is the best decision moving forward as opposed to keeping this other thing going. So I almost think, to answer your question, Seth, Cam may have done this to himself versus Mac Jones just outplaying him, because you know better than I do. Right. How much stock you going to put into a second and third, fourth string play in the preseason? Right. You know, Bill Belichick went through the entire offseason saying Cam Newton is our starter. Cam Newton is our starter. I don't think Mac Jones' play against second and third and fourth stringers changed their mind as much as Cam's decision-making changed their mind. And they just decided, you know what? Even if it cost us a game or two early, eventually, this is the guy we're going to go to, and Cam is just a stopgap. You know, once you take a guy in the first round, eventually he's going to have the job. So it's just a matter of Cam Newton doing everything correctly, playing well to hold off the decision to go to Mac Jones. And the one thing Cam didn't do, in my opinion, whatever landed him on that reserve COVID list because he left camp or what have you, I don't think that set well with the Patriots organization. And I know it didn't sit well with Bill Belichick.
Well, let me bring this into focus. One thing is, you know, Bill Belichick said that Cam didn't do anything wrong. That was a mistake. You know, I don't like what I'm seeing, and I really don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far.
I know what you're saying.
And debate it as far as this COVID thing is concerned. Yep. But, you know, the media's portraying these situations like, okay, guys that aren't vaccinated, they got different protocols that they have to adhere to. The situation really isn't different for vaccinated or unvaccinated guys as far as your ability to, you know, transmit it or get it. So we're almost in a situation where, you know, the media is picking up on, and they're smart enough to figure out that, hey, that guy isn't vaccinated. Okay, so let's go to war on those that aren't vaccinated, because if you're not vaccinated, you're a dummy. You know, hey, listen, You know, I see the arguments on social media about vaccination, this, that, and the other. Well, you know, you don't know what's in Tylenol. You don't know what's in aspirin. You don't know what's in NyQuil. That's true. But you have an option. You have an option to choose whether you want to take those things or not. And I think that, you know, it's a player's right. And I'm not saying that I'm pro or against anything. I'm saying it's every person's right, depending on what they think and what they believe, you know, and for them and their family to do what's necessary. If that's the case, then I'm sure that Cam Newton is not the only unvaccinated player on the team. You know,
I agree.
So there's a sense of being two-faced if that's their moral high ground, that he made a bad decision, put the team in jeopardy, because you're always going to have guys on the team. You're on every team, I would imagine, except for quote unquote the Atlanta Falcons. Everybody's got some guys that aren't vaccinated. But
right.
You know, listen, Mac Jones got great leadership skills. You know, to your point, he's a first rounder. They want to get him on the field. You know, does Cam Newton give you the best opportunity from a game plan standpoint of what you've seen as a quarterback that's been around as long as he's been around? You know, people forget that the games in the preseason and what you see a guy do on the practice field is going to be markedly different than what that young guy is going to face on the field. And you don't want to have to go to Bobby Hoyer, you know, if things go sideways with him. So it's just an interesting deal, man. So moving on.
Let me ask you this, Seth. Let me ask you this. Because I don't necessarily disagree with you. Obviously, I'm here. I'm not there in Boston, so I'm kind of speculating myself. There is a case to be made that he just outplayed Cam Newton in the preseason, but I think Bill Belichick is smart enough, and he's the greatest football coach of all time, in my opinion, outside of Andy Reid. But you can't argue against 6 Super Bowl rings. And you can give him 8 if you want to give him the 2 as a defensive coordinator of the New York Giants under Bill Parcells. He has to know that what Cam Newton has done versus Mac Jones against backups isn't necessarily the same thing. So to me, there has to be something else there, unless they're saying, no, we're just looking at the playbook. We're looking at the decision-making on the field, where to go with the football, the accuracy, all the numbers that are in Mac Jones's favor. And they may just be making a football decision, saying, we're just going to, we see this kid, we see what he's doing, we've seen Cam Newton, we feel this kid gives us the best chance to win. And who am I to question Bill Belichick, right? Like if they feel that, then that's what they feel. I'm just not high on Mac Jones, so part of my mind says, oh, it got to be something else. like it's got to be something else as to why they chose to go with Mac Jones over Cam Newton. But also, I've never been the biggest Cam Newton fan. I just never been the biggest Cam Newton fan. So, you know, I mean, to your point, I don't want to miscast the whole unvaccinated versus vaccinated thing.
Right.
It could just be a football decision, right? Like it could just be strictly a football decision. And quite frankly, if you aren't going to name Cam Newton a starter, you can't have him there because he's not. He can't be a backup. He's not going to be a backup there.
Fair enough. Let's go through some more of these other guys. Just we'll just name them, and I'm gonna name them off, and I'll let you touch on the guys that you want. I think there's one guy that I know that you want to touch on. So Malcolm Butler's on the reserve retired list in Arizona. He's having cold feet about whether he wants to play. Everson Griffin signed back with the Minnesota Vikings, was there all the 8 days released today. Desmond Trufant, cornerback with the Bears. Bashard Perryman with the Lions was released. Sidney Jones traded to the Seahawks, got a new home. We got Matt Pryor and a 7th rounder headed to the Indianapolis Colts for a 6th rounder. I'm not crying over that move. And
I don't think none of us are. Yeah, I don't think any of us are.
And Jameis Winston named the starter in New Orleans. Have at it, brother.
Well, let me go backwards. Shout out to Sean Payton realizing that. Are you serious? I mean, Taysom Hill is a nice little gadget to have. It's a nice little change of pace. Jameis Winston, we know he has a turnover problem, but Jameis Winston has thrown for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns in this league. Okay, Sean Payton, you're a great coach. You should be able to get most of that out of Jameis Winston with your offense. So no surprise that Jameis Winston was named the starter. Actually, would have been more surprised had it went the other way. So I'm okay with that move in New Orleans. Sydney, I mean, Sydney's still trying to find a home. At least he gets to go back and play where he played college ball at, out there in Washington, the state of Washington, right. and maybe that helps him out. I was a Sidney Jones guy. I had to sort of turn my Sidney Jones card in. So I turned that card in. Yeah, I'm off the Sidney Jones bandwagon. Everson Griffin, a guy that if you weren't concerned about like locker room stuff or just him off the field, I know he's had some stuff he's had to deal with, and his mental health is seemingly under control. But I don't know. Well, on defense, I guess the Eagles, they do have a good amount of veteran leadership over there that he could possibly thrive in. But he's also been somewhat of a guy that doesn't mind speaking his mind. I was surprised the Vikings traded back for him or brought him back in after he called Kirk Cousins overrated and basically said the head coach would vouch that Kirk Cousins was overrated. So I was surprised the Vikings brought him in, brought him back into the fold. So I wouldn't expect the Eagles to go down that road. The one guy, Malcolm Butler, as a veteran corner that's played at a Pro Bowl level, has championship ring under his belt. We know he made arguably one of the greatest defensive plays, and Butler is. We know he was standing on the sideline when Nick Foles was shredding that Bill Belichick defense. But I still believe Malcolm Butler is a good football player. I would certainly have interest there, but with everything, it's always about what it's going to cost us to get him, right? Like, so what would it cost you to get a guy like Malcolm Butler? So I'm always interested in good defensive football players. The one thing I think we're lacking a little bit of, Seth, on that side of the football, at least as of right now, we got to give the guys a chance to go out there and play and see what Jonathan Gannon is going to do schematically. But we don't take the ball away enough. We don't create turnovers. We don't create havoc on the defensive side of the ball. Like we don't put fear in offensive coordinators to where they got to sit up all night worrying about how do you stop Buddy's 4-6 defense. How am I going to block this guy? How am I going to block that guy? Where are they going to come at this way? Jim Johnson's bringing blitzes from here, blitzes from there. Like we don't do that to opposing teams' offenses. Haven't done it since Jim Johnson passed away, unfortunately. And hopefully Jonathan Gannon, from what I'm hearing, likes that style of defense where he kind of dictates what a defense is going to do. And so, Malcolm Butler is a guy, in my opinion, has always been a guy that's around the football, that takes away the football. And hopefully we got enough guys here. I like Anthony Harris and some of the other guys. So if I'm just picking at the list of names that you brought up, he would be the one guy that would interest me of that group.
Well, listen, I'll tell you this. Turnovers happen as a result of pressure. And when you don't pressure the quarterback, when you don't put pressure on the running game, with line stunts and run stunts on first and second down, when you know that they're in, run formations, it's hard to get turnovers, when you like playing sticks defense all the time and everything you do is about bend but don't break. I'm telling you, as we transition into some Eagle talk, I think one of the things that I'm most interested to see is how this vanilla offense and this vanilla defense, spoken of, by the head coach and the defensive coordinator, how that's going to translate, into the regular season, and how proficient they are at running it. Because, it's one thing to run it in practice, It's another thing to run it in the game when the tempo is much higher, and you got to get the timing and all of these things right. So for me, it's always been about pressure. Listen, you guys were able to create pressure because create turnovers because y'all brought pressure. We were able to create turnovers because we brought pressure. That speeds up the quarterback's clock. That screws with protection, which means the guys get, come free. So you got opportunities for strip sacks. You got quarterbacks making, hairline decisions because he's under pressure, because, he knows that it's coming and he got to get rid of it.
Yes,
You got running backs, sometimes it's got the ball in the wrong hand and he thinks a hole is wide open and we're actually stunting into the hole. Boom, you knock the ball out. So it's really all about the pressure that you can apply. And I'm really, really interested to see what this coaching staff brings to the table, because all along they was like, hey, we got some things we kind of going to keep under wraps. We want to show our hand. We have the element of surprise because we're a new staff going into the season, but like I know, after 4 game films, ain't nothing a secret no more.
No.
Nothing.
Yeah, the element of surprise goes out the door after a few weeks of video footage. No, you're right. And I think the secondary that we put together, it's going to be interesting who was starting at the other safety spot, opposite Anthony Harris. Because, Seth, as if a defensive coordinator, if they decide to call a pressure and you can't hold up and the secondary gives up a big play, we're moving away from the pressure. Like, now the defensive coordinator gets nervous and is apprehensive to call rushes or extra pressure if he doesn't think you can hold up on the back end.
Right.
And you got to have smart players on the back end to be able to pressure guys. And they brought veterans in. That's why I like Steve Nelson. I like Big Play Slate, Anthony Harris. Who's going to play? If we can get Rodney McLeod back, Marcus Epps has done a nice job for us. So I would imagine he's going to be in there. Kavon Wallace, it seems like they like him, but he can't stay healthy. So,
right.
So you wonder how much he's going to be able to be relied upon. But you got to have smart players on the back end that don't make mistakes. Because when you bring in extra pressure, Seth, you got to have that coverage, right? Like guys better know who they're supposed to have in response and coverages. So I like what we have because we have a veteran defense. It's going to all be predicated on whether or not Jonathan Gannon is going to be able to have the confidence to dial it up. I mean, Jim Johnson had a lot of horses at his disposal. Buddy Ryan had a lot of horses at his disposal. I think we got some potential. I actually do. I actually like our defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just anxious to see how they're used, right? Like, okay, what do we do? So I'm actually excited about the unknown because I don't know what Jonathan Gannon is going to do as a defensive coordinator.
Well, listen, two things. You need that veteran leadership on the back end, because most of the time when teams get beat, it's because they don't communicate. You see a guy running into the end zone, he's looking at the safety like, I thought you had my back over top. No,
Hands
you
up.
didn't. Yeah, you didn't talk to me and tell me what you wanted me to do before the ball was snapped. That's veterans. The veterans will communicate that way. It's interesting that you talk about, what they're doing defensively, because they line up in some of that 4-3 look in the preseason with Jannard Avery and Osman, who they've, since moved on from. But that guy's kind of like a rover. He's kind of like a bandit or a badger. You can move him anywhere, and that allows them to have a 5-man pressure to make the offensive line block man-to-man. Eric Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy, to me, that is more known for his ability to cover backside of the backfield, to rush the passer. I don't see him with his size really being a guy that really plays a major role in the run game. That could be problematic. But when they need to bring pressure, if you can scheme it up and dial it up the right way, if you're smart enough to get an offense to declare the protection one way, and once they slide that way, you can drop out of coverage on that way and come from the other side, then you got something working. I was reading a quote from Jim Schwartz just earlier today. He's like, we tried everything. We did this, we did that, nothing seemed to work. And I'm like, come on, man. You mean to tell me you can't entice the protection to move one way and bring another guy from the other side and roll coverage? A lot of that stuff just comes down also to your ability to disguise it, because when you're playing against younger quarterbacks, it takes a lot longer for them to decipher what's going on, especially if you can hold your water until the 10-second mark in the clock as he's trying to figure it out. But for the older guys, man, shoot, you can come out no matter where you lined up. They already know what you're going to. Even if you're showing one thing, you go to something else. So a lot of that is just really, communication. Let's jump into the guys that was released today, and I got some guys highlighted that I was shocked with today for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles released safety Andrew Adams, LaRaven Clark, tackle. I thought he was a guy that might stick because of his versatility to play both sides. Running back Jordan Howard was an absolute shock to me. Absolute shock. Hassan.
Yeah, I'm shocked that they brought him back here. I was absolutely shocked they brought him back to Philly.
Listen, I was shocked, but the dude looked like he was in shape, and he only been in the league 5 years, man. I mean, when you look at Jordan Howard, you look at him and think that this guy's been around for a long time, man. He's only been in the league for 5 years. I mean, there's not a whole lot of wear and tear. He looked good in protection during the preseason. They really didn't run the ball that much, so you really couldn't get a look, other than Gainwell late in the game. He's the only guy that really ran the ball in the preseason where you could really get a gauge for what he could do. So I was shocked with that. I was shocked at Richard Rodgers because I thought Richard Rodgers played well. They went with the young guys. That kind of tells me that, hey, and that's part of one of my questions later on, but, I kind of spilled the beans now. I mean, that to me, that solidifies the fact that, that Zach Ertz is here to stay, at least for this year, I mean, listen, what are you going to get out of Tyree Jackson? What are you going to get out of Jack Stahl? Both young guys that doesn't have a lot of experience. And the problem is if Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert gets hurt, then you lose the veteran, the ability to have a guy as a veteran at that position. Cornerback Kevon Seymour, Graylin Arnold, some of these guys I never even heard of. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. Wosick. I'm not even try to pronounce his first name. Travis Fulgham, okay, and John Hightower. Can you tell me how it's possible? I'm going to stop right there and I'll come back to the rest because I wouldn't do the show or the fans or the viewers any justice if I don't ask you this question. How the hell is JJAW still on this damn roster, man?
They like to talk. They talked about his special teams play. So I'm imagining that's how he's still here. He's a better special teams player than Hightower and Travis Fulgham. And you know what that is? That's more of him being willing to go down there and stick his head in there and make some tackles and do some things of that nature because he's not a punt returner or a kickoff returner. So it's his coverage skills that seemingly separated him from Hightower and Fulgham. Other than that, you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Right? He hasn't necessarily done anything from a receiver standpoint during the regular season to prove that he deserves to be on the roster for a third year in a row. The only problem I guess the only thing I would say also, Seth, is that, Fulgham had a 4-game stretch, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And he had a 4-game stretch. John Hightower, a kid that I like. I like him for his speed. I love the fact that he actually has the ability to get open, but for some reason he can't catch the damn ball when he gets open. And that's a prerequisite to being a receiver in the NFL, right? You got to be able to catch the ball. So I think Hightower, and I actually would be surprised if they brought Hightower back on the practice squad, right? Because he may be their second fastest receiver of the group of receivers. So, but my only thing with Ortega has to be he's one of their best cover guys. Because here's the other thing. They only kept 3 running backs, right? So And of the 3 running backs, none of those guys are cover guys. Miles Sanders not playing special teams.
Right.
Kenny Gainwell will, and Boston Scott will be out there. And I don't know if Boston Scott's really a cover guy. He's not a guy that's running down on kickoff, making tackles. So they must have kept extra linebackers, extra safeties, because I actually thought they would keep 6 wide receivers, Seth. I thought they would keep 6 wide receivers. They only kept 5.
And listen, I agree. I'm sitting here looking at the numbers. They kept 7 linebackers, which is,
they never keep 7 linebackers.
Well, listen, unless we're missing something about how it is that that Jonathan Gannon is going to run his defense. It seems like that's too many linebackers, where offenses force you by formation to only play 2 linebackers at a time. That means you got 5 linebackers, that's inactive. I'm talking about from a defensive perspective. How many of those guys, listen, if you're going to keep, Davion Taylor, listen, he's a 3rd or 4th round guy. They're trying to figure it out. Okay. They're trying to figure out whether he can be that guy. You got Patrick Johnson. I think that he's, that guy that they're going to use in that rover, that 5-man rover that I talked about, where you can move him around and do some different things. Singleton's earned his spot. Wilson's earned his spot. TJ Edwards, is a guy that's probably the 3rd, overall linebacker. He's the next guy that goes in, and one of those guys go down. So, and Jannard Avery is another guy that you can use, in that rover type, bandit type position. But that's a lot of linebackers to have, and I just felt like when I saw JJAW on there, I was thinking the same thing. I watched him in coverage, on special teams. I'm like, this dude's going to game the system. He know that these young guys don't know that there's about 3 positions that's going to be there for guys who just excel on special teams. And to me, he gained the system to kind of, hang around for an extra year. I tell you this, and then I'm going to pass it off to you. Okay. Travis Fulgham is a guy that I felt like, listen, I don't think that the guy was just a flash in the pan. I thought the Eagles made a major mistake last year when they pulled him off the field in the midst of his little run for Alshon. I thought that was a major mistake for a young guy. I mean, how do you process that? You arrest his development, you mess with his psyche, you mess with his confidence. And as a pro athlete, the most important thing you have is your confidence. If you don't have that, listen, you can run 4.2 and bench 400 pounds. But if you don't think you can, then you like that little train. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So you got to believe that. And I thought that they just really destroyed that as far as he was concerned. But, I also heard some rumblings that the dude don't work the way he needs to work. I heard a little bit of that too, right? I heard a little bit of that too, and it makes you wonder with the guy. When he flashes, there's talent there. There's talent there. So then you wonder, okay, what is it that has held this guy back from being able to reach his potential and maximize that talent? And there has to be some sort of lack of motivation, lack of concentration, focus, determination. We've seen plenty of players. Help me though. I'm gonna let you finish your thought, but help me, okay? Mm-hmm. Here's a young guy. I don't know how many years he's been in the league, but I know he's bounced around quite a bit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Opportunity's door has opened to you, and you stepped in, and you making a name for yourself. And you're not smart enough to see that, it's you're being pulled off the field, not because of how you playing, but the politics of football. Okay. That little 4-game run should have been enough to kind of feed his motivation to not only get in great shape, but come in a situation where that the coaches said it's all about competition. So the guys that compete the best, the guy that produced the most, those are the guys that are going to play. So why aren't you trying to figure out how it's not you, Jalen Reagor, and Devontae Smith?
Right.
Instead of allowing the situation to turn the way that it is. You're gonna go to work every day. You go to practice every day. You mean to tell me you're not gonna lay it all on the line for you to get back to where you were during that 4-game stretch? That blows my mind.
Yeah, man. But Seth, you listen. You got it out of the mud. Like so many of us has had to do it, right? There can only be so many first and second, third round draft picks, and you were drafted during the time that there were 9, 10, 11, 12 rounds in a draft, and you tried to make a football team, but you had that in you, and we've seen a lot of players. I know I've seen a lot of players that even more talented than Travis Fulgham that were drafted higher than Travis Fulgham, and they just couldn't put it together. They just, whatever it was, I don't know what it was, that I would sit back and say, man, if I had your size, or if I you know what I mean, like do this,
Right.
do you realize what I could be like? You wasting your talent. And a guy like Travis, who's had to fight to stay in this league, who's been cut, who's had to go to another team, you would think he wouldn't need any more motivation,
right,
or what have you. That everything has basically been put in front of him, and now you have that opportunity. And listen, what was Quez Watkins? A 6th round draft pick, like 7th round draft pick? So it's not like Quez Watkins came in and had an advantage over all the other receivers. No, he was the most consistent. He's the guy who flashed, because Travis started out with the first team
right,
when training camp started. So they obviously gave him that opportunity. The few times I was out there, I can't necessarily say I saw anything that just stood out. And maybe that's what it was that maybe he wasn't bad, but he also didn't do anything to stand out.
right.
And so maybe that's what hurt him. But man, so many young guys, they don't realize it until it's too late. And then they wish they had done more when they had the opportunity to do it.
Well, listen, a lot of times the best thing that happened to me was getting cut them first 2 games of my rookie year, because it created in me, an even greater fire that if I ever got the chance again, that I wouldn't take it for granted. And it's not like, I was taking it for granted. It's just that, hey, there was 7 veterans on the team that was here when I got here. Then they drafted 3 other linebackers before they got to me. So those guys, all of those guys is going to get their chance before I even got a chance to see the field. But like JJAW fooled, the system. A veteran told me, hey, look, there are going to be 3 positions that they're going to leave for special team player. You want to make this team, start tearing it up on special team. Yes, and that's what I did. And even though I missed the first 2 games, when I came back that week 3, I was a completely different person, man. I was a completely different animal. I wasn't leaving again. I wasn't leaving unless it was a political thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I know what you're saying.
It wasn't going to be because, I wasn't working. I wasn't preparing. Listen, hey, if you need an offensive lineman, I'll get in there and kick. Okay? Yeah. You need a running back.
For people who don't understand what you mean by a political thing, that means it was going to be somebody that was drafted higher. Right. And they were going to get a chance to be on the roster because they were drafted higher.
Well, let's keep going. So running back, Jason Huntley, we didn't really see much from him. Michael Jacquet, man, I feel so bad for this kid, man, because he tried. He gave it his all, man. He gave it his all. He was just like 1 good play, 2 bad plays. 2 good plays, 2 bad plays, And
hey Seth, you would have been the linebacker like, man, if we don't get this joker off the field right now, man.
Wow. It was painful to watch him because these guys come
tough,
in,
man.
Yeah. I mean, he's giving his all, but it just ain't working out. So cornerback Craig James, he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Matt Leo, Sua Opeta. Now here's a guy that played quite a bit during the preseason.
Started games. He started games.
I was shocked to see that. Andre,
go
ahead.
Now I was gonna say, with the offensive line, Well, listen, Andre had to hold down the spot. Andre Dillard had to hold down the spot.
Well, listen. So
that's a first round draft pick right there. He had to hold down the spot.
That's
right?
just in case y'all wondering about what those politics are. That's what we talking about. We ain't talking about no Democrats and no Republicans either. So let's get into Dillard, because obviously, Mylott is the guy. He's in a contract year. They're gonna have to pay him. You can't pay him and have the 20-something overall first-round draft pick from 2 years ago on the roster too, who, oh, by the way, can only play left tackle. He can't play guard. He can't play center. He can't play right tackle. He can only play left tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these guys at some point, Howie's just going to have to bite the bullet and say, hey, you know what? I missed on that one. At some point in time, because all JJAW is going to be in reality, in my opinion, and I don't know, maybe in year 3, the light goes off. I mean, I don't see the speed. I don't see the quickness. I don't see any of the things, the fluidity. I don't see none of the things, that proves to me that he might be, a serviceable wide receiver. But my problem is, okay, at what point do you bite the bullet and not really care about, what the public has to say, how the media is going to roast you for missing on a second-round pick and a first-round pick in Andre Dillard and make the move? Or maybe you find somebody foolish enough to package them up and send them both up out of here for some picks.
Listen, that's probably what they're hoping for. They're hoping somebody is desperate enough that they want Arcega-Whiteside.
Well, but listen, listen, if you saw Matt Pryor play, I wouldn't have given a hot 6-pack of beer and a Philly pretzel for him in a trade.
Right.
So come on. Somebody out there is going to have a need for him, for these players, whether it's depth or whatever it is. It's just a matter of how we find the right team at the right time that's really willing to give up some draft capital.
And that's really probably why those guys are still here, because they're saying, are we really releasing anyone that's clearly better than these guys, right? Even with Arcega-Whiteside, I like Hightower, you like Fulgham, right? And it's not that I dislike Fulgham, but just giving 2 examples, they're saying to themselves, okay, but has either one of these guys really proven that they're better than Arcega-Whiteside? So we may as well keep our second-round pick. Andre Dillard. All right, they're going to make Mylott the left tackle. But then you look at the linemen that they released, they're probably saying to themselves, okay, all right, these guys are going to be a backup. He's a backup. We may as well keep him since we drafted him if there's not a discernible difference in the 2 players.
Come on, Ike. You got – hey.
I'm trying to make sense out of it, Seth.
No, I hear you. I hear you. But you on the Democratic caucus and I'm on the Republican caucus right now, okay? Because we can't agree on that. There is no way in hell that you can keep Andre Dillard, a number 20-something first-round pick, when the guy that beat him out is a 7th-round 4-year project that you're going to have to pay. You can't keep that guy. I mean, every single time he walk out on the field, you're reminded of, man, we screwed that one up. You can't do it, man.
Yeah, I agree, Seth. I tried to make sense out of it. It's not what I would have done.
Right.
I'm with you. I would have just moved on. The writing is on the wall. Nobody's going to overpay from a draft pick standpoint to get him. If he's obviously not your starting left tackle, these GMs around the league know that he's not good enough to beat out a guy who you just said was a project. The guy who never played football, he played rugby, and you can't beat him out. So that sends out red flags to everyone around the league. So I would just move on from that. That's what I would have done. I don't think anyone would be upset that they moved on from him. Yeah, is it a little egg on your face? Sure it is, but
that's a whole carton. That's a whole carton of eggs.
But the funny thing is, Is that better than trying to explain why Andre Dillard is still here? Like, I just tried to explain why he's still here, and you weren't buying any of that. I just tried to explain why he's still here, and nobody is going to buy that. Like, nobody's going to buy that.
But I mean, that goes back to my point that Howie is kind of notorious for keeping high draft picks around way beyond, the time, their proven time. They've proven that they can't play. They've proven that they can't get it done. So sometimes the best thing to do is, cut bait and move on. But I think that I think this organization holds hope beyond hope that the light will go off for some of these guys. And the truth of the matter is, some of them they ain't gonna ever get to where you expected them to be. When you draft a guy, you draft him on pure potential, and you're hoping that in your evaluation process, you hit all the spots that you need to hit that tells you what this guy is like. The problem is there's no measurement for heart, and there's no measurement for football intellect. You can give a guy a Wonderlic test. Listen, I play with guys that bomb the Wonderlic test, but with football geniuses on the field. You know what I'm saying? But until they come up with a metric, that measures a guy's heart and how much passion he actually has for the game and his willingness to pour his spirit, soul, and body into the game, then the draft will always be a crapshoot.
I agree. I agree. And what you want to do is hit on more of those guys than you miss on. And you certainly want to hit on your early draft picks. Now, everybody you draft isn't going to necessarily be all pro bowlers, and Hall of Famers. But, man, when you draft a guy in those first 2 or 3 rounds, you're drafting them because you believe they are starting caliber players in the NFL. And so if the majority of your 22 starters isn't filled with guys that you drafted early in the draft, and you're a good football team, a playoff team, a title contending team, you aren't necessarily having a successful draft, or your coaches aren't doing a good job of developing players, right? Because I agree. When you get a player out of college, it doesn't mean this should be the finished product.
Right.
Like, I'm a firm believer, Seth. I was a product of hard work. I believe I was an overachiever. But, man, I had some damn good coaches, man. Like, I had guys that knew what I was good at, how to put me in a great position and get the most out of me. And that's why I played longer than probably a lot of people ever thought I would play. But I also realized I had good coaching. I had good coaching that helped develop what was in me. And I played with a lot of guys that got that good coaching because that was an awesome, fantastic, great coaching staff I played under, right? I played under a great coaching staff. So I think also a big problem with the Eagles, and hopefully they got it right this time around, is that one knock I had on Doug, and especially on Chip, he just wasn't here long enough, but on Doug, more to say, we didn't develop our young players enough. Like, who has actually gotten better throughout their career? Which young guy came in one way, and then by year 2, year 3, you saw a completely different player. Right. And so we haven't done enough of that. And hopefully these guys that we have in here now are going to be good developers of talent and harnessing that talent. And more importantly, knowing how to use them and put them in a good position, as opposed to asking them to do things that aren't necessarily to their strength. So you got to develop players. You got to help players get better. It's not like basketball where you see what a guy is and that's what he's going to be. In football, you can actually get better each year and be a different player. So with good coaching, that happens. I just don't think we've done a good job with developing young guys lately.
Hey, listen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've been saying this way before, when Chip was here, that, to be a great position coach goes way beyond the X's and O's. What can you offer your player on a daily basis? What kind of toolbox can you build for your players on a daily basis to help them get better? Now, the dynamics are different. Back in my day, you could stop practice and start 9-on-7 all over. If you didn't like what was going on as a coach, you could, you had time because you had players around to work on the small things that help them become better players. But what I've seen is, listen, there's a lot of coaches on Doug Peterson's on his staff that I'm looking at wide receivers and defensive backs and linebackers that aren't getting better. That's a ringing indictment on the position coach because, you can only get better to the level that you're being coached. When I had a coach like Wade Phillips and Jeff Fisher, Buddy Ryan, and Fritz Shermer and Bud Carson, I mean, I could just go on and on. Each one of those guys poured something into me to help make me a better football player. Now, along the way, I had some position coaches that didn't help me do anything. I would walk in on Wednesday morning. I'm like, hand me my game plan and leave me the hell alone the rest of the week. Don't even say nothing to me the rest of the week, okay? Because they just, and that's the world you kind of live in when you talk about the NFL now. The way that coaching staffs are built, these guys come in as GAs and like, hey man, I'll take care of you when I get a job. You take care of me when you get a job. And it's like, what qualities are you bringing to the table? That's going to help your players be better players if you're not really a great teacher. If you only X's and O's guy, you know what I'm saying? And to Nick Sirianni's credit, I look at how he coaches these players, how his coaches coach players, and you can see a difference in the linebackers. You can see a difference in how the wide receivers run routes, opposed to past years. You can see a difference, in running backs catching passes out of the backfield. You're looking at defensive backs, in their back pedal and things of that nature. So they're bringing something that hasn't happened before, and it's going to take time to get it there. But I think they're on the right track, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. You've got to have great teachers. So for the last couple of minutes, I want to get into Nick Sirianni and what's going to happen with the Eagles this year. I watched the first half of the first preseason game against the Steelers, and I was excited, man. I was like, man, this team is not going to be a below 500 team. I don't know how many over 500 they're going to be, but they are not going to be a 500 team. They're going to be above it. And then they come out. In the last two games, they make a decision not to play any starters whatsoever. And then when the media asks Nick says, well, we had these really hard practices against the Patriots, two hard practices against the Jets. We have played what's equivalent to 4 games. So we played 7 preseason games. And I'm looking at him like, you got to be kidding me, right? Your 2 practices against the Patriots were like playing a game. That hour and 45-minute practice that you had 2 days in a row was like playing a 3-hour game. And you expect me to believe that? Now there's some people out there that don't know no better that might believe that. Okay. But for us who played the game, we know that that's a bunch of BS, man. And the thing that I'm worried about the most is that this football team is not going to be ready. I'm worried about the quarterback, and I'm worried about the rest of the players finding their footing, having their timing, and all those things in a game type situation rather than just practice. Because you can't simulate a game type intensity and speed in practice. I don't care how fast and how hard you practice. It's impossible.
Yeah. I listen, Seth, I 100% agree on this. I was surprised at that they didn't play the first team a little more. I thought Jalen Hurts needed more than just 10 snaps of preseason football. I mean, we're sending our starting quarterback into Atlanta on the road to take on a veteran quarterback that's going to be at home that feels like, this is a winnable game for them. Like the Falcons are going to feel like, man, we got a good game to start the season off with. We got a rookie head coach with a quarterback who's making his 5th start of his career in our house. We need to get off to a good start. So the Falcons are going to want to win that football game. And until your point about whether or not this team is going to be ready, that's one of my concerns. I'm not worried about the Fletcher Coxes and the Brandon Grahams and the veteran players, right? These guys have gone through this, but we are relying on a lot of young guys this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And so they have yet to go through, hell, a quarter, let alone a half or a game together as a unit. They don't know what it's like to come over after 3 or 4 series and make adjustments once the other team has figured out what you're trying to do and they make adjustments. They don't know what it's like to come out of the locker room after halftime and make adjustments. So the players is one aspect of the concern I have. And then, you know, I would have liked to have seen, you know, the coaching staff, Nick Sirianni, get a little more game reps with Jalen Hurts and working with him in in-game situations. Even though it's preseason, there's still situations that come up that you all will be going through for the first time in a live game. And like you said, you can try to simulate it as much as you want to. Running a 2-minute drill and hurry up offense in practice is a lot different than running it in week 2, 3, and 4 of the regular season when there's games on the line. So there's a lot different. There's a lot different pace. There's a lot different thinking process that goes on. You know why? Because it actually counts now.
Right.
So what you would do in the preseason isn't necessarily what you would do in a regular season late in a game when it comes to decision making. So that concerns me a little bit. And listen, they were already going to they have the ability to do some good things, but this to me does not help them get off on the fast start that you would like to see them get off on. It really almost makes the first month of the season the preseason.
Yeah. And to your point, those games are too valuable for that.
Yes.
You know, when I look at Jalen Hurts, you know, here's a guy who came in last year, and for me, I take these things into consideration. Here's a guy that was drafted last year. He didn't get any OTA. He didn't have any real training camp. He got no preseason games last year. Got thrown in for the last 3.5 games last year. You roll him in this year, he's got OTAs, he's got training camp, and he's got 3 preseason games. He only played 10 snaps, man. He had 10 plays in the preseason, and you're gonna roll him out on September 12th when it all counts, when the fans are screaming, you know, when the other team's trying to take your head off, when the other coaching staff is strategizing, and you put this guy in a situation, to me, to almost fail because you don't give him enough reps. I mean, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Yeah, the whole Jalen Hurts thing. Listen, they finally came out and named him the starter today. Something that we seemingly knew was obvious to everyone, but they made it. I guess they made it official today.
Right.
For the time being, that he's the starter. But I even said this, Seth, that along with trading for Gardner Minshew, that made me scratch my head. I just think it just adds unnecessary noise around Jalen Hurts. Just let Jalen Hurts play, get behind him, and listen, if you got to make a different decision at the end of the season, so be it. But right now, it should be all about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles going into the season. And trading for Gardner, I just think it gives people a reason to want to go to the backup quarterback. It just
listen, Howie's got to hold up. You know, he got a quarterback factory to populate. You know what I'm saying? And listen, I will go so far as to. I think Jalen Hurts is different from Carson Wentz from a psychological standpoint. I don't think that Gardner Minshew fazed him one bit with all that he's been through. Okay, I do think that it could be a power move by Howie because now he's acquiring these pieces that you can package together. At some point in time, a team's going to need a Gardner Minshew. The Eagles got him for what, a 6th round, 7th round draft pick? So if you can package him up with somebody else and get some other players, then Howie again is going to look like a genius when it's all said and done.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess if you're a Howie fan, I guess you can look at that. I just thought about it today. I'm like, because I'm like you. Why would you bring him in? With the way
Yeah.
Joe Flacco played in the last game, that should have been validation enough that we got quarterback 1 and we got quarterback 2. Now let's go find us a young guy to bring in that's kind of got some of the skill sets that a Jalen Hurts has, so we can build him for the future. So when Joe walks away, if Jalen gets hurt, this next guy steps in, and our entire playbook, we can keep running it. We don't have to adjust it for his skill set. But I think that potentially Howie is just acquiring assets to make moves and do what he does. We'll see. I will say this. I'll ask you this last question, and last 2 questions. Was this decision to sit the starters throughout preseason, is it a Nick Sirianni decision or a Howie Roseman decision? In your opinion?
Yeah, here's where politicking comes in again, because now I got to give you the political answer. I think it was a collective decision.
Okay.
I really do think it was a collective decision. It's hard for me to say if somebody came in and made a decision that Nick Sirianni wasn't on board with, right? For the veterans, I'm not surprised that certain veterans didn't go out there and get reps. This is, Seth, a unique time in the NFL, right? There are maybe a handful of coaches. I'm thinking Andy, Bill Belichick,
Sean Payton,
Pete Carroll, Sean Payton. These may be the only coaches that are making decisions independent of anybody superseding what their final decision is.
Right.
Right. Even a guy like John Harbaugh is going to lean on that trusted front office of the Baltimore Ravens. Right. John's going to have his say, but he's also going to listen to those guys.
Right.
As to what they should do. A guy like Mike Tomlin, who's had the success he's had. We know the Pittsburgh Steelers are a mom and pop shop. Their front office is going to do what they think is best for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Mike Tomlin is going to go along with it because that's job security. I can't think of anybody else. But most of these organizations are hiring the type of coaches that don't mind the front office, the GM having say, right? So it's this sort of collaborative decision-making thing that a lot of front offices want to do. And I think it's honestly in fear of what has happened in the past with coaches that have abused that type of power or just didn't know how to handle that much power, meaning that they became less effective as a coach because they were doing other things as well. So I think these owners have decided, you know what? We don't need to hire a coach that wants to have final say on everything. We want a coach that wants inclusion, that wants to hear from the front office, and is going to be okay with it. The real key question is what happens when there is a difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, Nick Sirianni is content with where he's at and what he's doing, that he's not looking to supersede what someone else has in mind for the roster. So, and Doug was that way until after Doug won.
Mm-hmm.
And when Doug won, Doug decided, no, I think I want to have a little more say in who's on my coaching staff, who's on my roster. I'm not so sure everybody agreed with Doug having more say, or at least final say.
Man, listen, I wish we had another half hour to delve into that right there, because I got so much. I got so much going on, man, that I'd like to just chop up about it, man. But you know what? I'm not gonna hold you much longer. I got 2 questions for you as we wrap it up.
Okay.
What worries you the most about the Eagles in 2021?
What worries me the most? Health.
Yeah.
Health on the offensive line. And it's I love the players that are there, the 3 veterans that are there. Jason Kelsey's an Iron Man. Knock on wood for him. He hasn't necessarily dealt with anything serious enough to cause him to miss a number of games. But Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson has.
Right.
And we saw last year that when you have a tattered offensive line, it disrupts everything. And so if we want Jalen to at least have the opportunity to go back there and be successful, we got to protect him. And so that's probably the thing that concerns me more than anything is, man, our right guard and our right tackle have missed a lot of time over the last 2 years. They aren't getting younger. So that would concern me more than anything. I got tempered expectations, Seth. So I'm not as concerned about how good they are versus how good I feel about them at the end of the year. Right. That's going to be determined by how much growth I see from Jalen, from Miles, from the young receivers. Do I like Jonathan Gannon's defense? I want to have the feeling that I had at the end of Doug's first year when the team started playing better. So I'm excited about the following year. So that's
and to your point, what excites you the most about the Eagles in 2021?
Oh man, that I don't have any expectations. Everything's new. Everything's new. I got a clean board, Seth. I don't have the Bronco bucking for me this year. I'm not waving. Listen, I'm not waving that flag this year. I can honestly say I'm just excited to have a fresh start. And it seems like most Eagle fans are on one accord with the football team. There isn't this split amongst the fan base on this and that and the other. And it's a fresh start. And it was time for a fresh start. And I like the young players that we have. I just hope we can play. So I'm just excited to finally hit that reset button. And hopefully we got some good young players, man, that we can root on. I can't even say for the next decade anymore. All I can say is for the next 5 years. Give me 5 years of these guys. Right. I'll be excited with that.
Man, listen, it's been great. I could run another hour with you. You know how it is when we get to talking football, man. But I tell you, like, huh?
I said, you know how we do, man.
I know, man. I know. I tell you this, man. In closing, I tell my guests every single week, when I have a guest on, our most valuable commodity, man, is our time, man. I appreciate you, getting on with me, chopping it up, talking, the energy, the excitement about the Eagles for the last hour and 7 minutes, man. I appreciate you, my brother. I do.
Man, it's always a pleasure. It's an honor for me, man. Love you, big bro.
Love you too, man. All right. Well, guys, that's the show for the week. I will see you right back here next Tuesday on the Seth Joyner Show. As always, be good to each other, take care of each other, but most important, make sure you're loving each other. See you next week. Peace.